All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Before we start our official ANC 1B meeting, we have Interim Director Nin Kine joining us from OHR, so DC's Office of Human Rights. She will be speaking for a bit, and then we'll open it up to the audience for Q&A. If any questions come up kind of before, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll have commissioners ask any questions, and then we'll turn it over to the Q&A. So take it away, Interim Director Kind.
Thank you, Commissioner Harris, for that warm welcome. I really appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Nin Kine. I'm the Interim Director here at OHR. Just a brief background. I was appointed Interim Director in October of 2021. I've been with OHR for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was in private litigation practice working on civil rights cases. So I also have with me Asian Brown from my office, who is our Community Engagement Specialist. Asian, would you like to pop in and say hello real quick before I get started?
Good evening, everyone. Asian Brown here, Community Engagement Specialist. Thanks for having us tonight. Looking forward to engaging with the community.
Thank you, Asian. Asian was responsible for getting me here, and he's been with OHR for a few years, and so he knows a thing or two. So with that, we'll get started, and we prepared a short program to introduce you to OHR and some of the laws that we enforce. When I became interim director, one of my goals was to increase our connections with the communities through various ways, one of which is to connect with ANCs. And so here we are. So I really appreciate your time this evening and look forward to any questions you may have. With that, I will go ahead and share screen. It worked quite well in our practice session, so it will work as well again. Okay, here we are. Okay, can everyone see that? Fantastic, yes. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so you might be familiar with Office of Human Rights. Our mission is to eradicate discrimination, increase equal opportunity, and protect civil rights through enforcement. But enforcement isn't the only way in which we address discrimination in DC, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout this presentation. So there are 4 general areas that we cover under the Human Rights Act. We cover employment, housing, public accommodation, as well as government services and educational institutions. And just so you know, like I said in the beginning, this is just an introduction overview. As you'll see, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the work of OHR. So I'm just going to give you a brief bird's eye view today because it's just 30 minutes, but I could do this an entire day, and we do have entire day trainings. And so if you're interested in more information about anything that we cover today, please feel free to reach out to Asian and he'll get you in touch with our other programmatic trainings. All right, so we enforce a number of laws, and one of which you're probably familiar with, the DC Human Rights Act of 1977, as amended. It's been amended several times, and so has become the most progressive, one of the most progressive and expansive human rights protections in the nation. In addition to the Human Rights Act, we also enforce the DC FMLA, the Family and Medical Leave Act. That's different from federal FMLA. So we get a lot of questions about that. And so it's really important that folks are aware that's not just federal FMLA that exists in the workplace, but there's also DC FMLA. And you might guess it, DC FMLA provides a little bit more protection, a little bit more benefits than federal FMLA, which is why you want to learn more about it. We also enforce the DC Parental Leave Act. We also have the Language Access Act, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. We also cover the Youth Bullying Prevention Act, DC Unemployment Anti-Discrimination Act, Protecting Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. We also have a number of Criminal Record Screening Amendment Act measures, both in employment and housing. Universal Paid Leave Act is one of the newer ones that we began enforcing in 2020. Even though the act went into effect in 2018. But I have to put a little footnote there that the parts of that Act, UPL, that OHR is responsible for is only with respect to interference and retaliation, so not claim determination. So under UPL, private employees, people that work for private sector employers, are afforded with paid leave for payment for leave that you might take, let's say, under DCFMLA. And so with that payment, if there is a dispute about whether or not there should have been payment, that does not come to OHR. That would go to DOES, Department of Employment Services. But if a claimant, an individual, an employee, were to find that that denial of payment was somehow an interference, somehow a retaliation, then that will come to our office at the Office of Human Rights. So just a little note there. We also became responsible for parts of the Tipped Wage Workers Fairness Act, which went into effect in 2019. But we are only responsible for the sexual harassment training compliance. So there were a lot of things that this law did, several of which DOES is responsible for. But with respect to the Office of Human Rights, what we are responsible for is ensuring that the tip wage industry businesses are complying with the law in providing sexual harassment training to its owners, to its managers, to its employees, and making sure that there is a clear and robust process for reporting sexual harassment complaints. And so we're responsible for making sure of that compliance end of the law. A similar piece that we're responsible for is the care for LGBTQ seniors and seniors with HIV Amendment Act. And again, the portion of that bill that OHR is responsible for is with respect to training. So that law requires long-term care facilities to provide training around anti-discrimination related to LGBTQ as well as HIV. And so again, if you want to know more information, we're happy to share that with you, either if you want to reach out to one of us or through attending one of our wonderful trainings that we have at OHR. So in addition to those local laws, through our work share agreement with the EEOC, the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, we also help to enforce a few other pieces of laws. So one of them, of course, you might be familiar with in employment is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Then we also help to enforce ADEA, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, the ADA, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which was amended back in 2008. The Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 with regard to fair housing. We also do, and I should note, of course, that the fair housing is through our work share agreement with HUD, not the EEOC, because that's housing. We also help to enforce GINA, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. So those are some laws that OHR enforces. So now I'll move on to telling you just a little bit more about the Human Rights Act. Again, because my time is limited this evening, I'm not going to talk about every single law that we enforce, but happy to tell you more about the trainings we offer. So the HRA. The HRA protects against discrimination based on 21 protected traits. Many of you might be familiar with that, which is, like I said before, makes it a really progressive and expansive coverage in the nation, because federal law covers about 7 to 8 protected traits. So as you can see, in contrast, DC really has excellent protections. The law also prohibits retaliation for reporting violations of the Human Rights Act, or assisting with filing complaints under the Human Rights Act, or simply complaining about a violation of the Human Rights Act. Now, anyone can file a complaint at OHR under the Human Rights Act, whether aggrieved or not. So whether you're actually the victim of discrimination, or you have a friend who is a victim, a neighbor who is a victim of discrimination, or you're an advocacy organization who wants to file a report on behalf of the constituents you serve, you can file a complaint at OHR. You do not have to be the aggrieved person. There's no cost to file. There are no filing fees or anything like that. It is free. There are many ways to file. You can file online. You can download a form online, send it to us via mail, via fax, via snail mail, however you want to deliver it to us. There are many ways to file a complaint. The HRA also requires OHR to provide mandatory mediation, which is really helpful in trying to resolve helps to bring early resolution to the disputes. The HRA, and this part I think folks are less aware of. HRA allows OHR to prosecute cases in which probable cause was found in investigation. So what that means is that once OHR finds probable cause in a case, OHR will actually take that case to a hearing, which is like a trial, a public hearing. If violation is found after a public hearing, the final order can assess damages like back pay, fees and costs, that sort of thing. Any questions so far? I'll take a breather here because I know I'm sort of just lunging ahead here. All right, so 21 protected traits, what are they? I will say generally there are 21 protected traits, but they vary with the area of enforcement. So you'll recall in the beginning, I talked about how OHR covers 4 areas: employment, educational institutions, housing, public accommodations / government services. So these protected traits will vary with those different areas. But I also, as you can see, highlighted for you the gray or dark font are the protected areas under federal law. The lighter font indicates the areas that are covered in DC. So again, as you can see, there are many more protected traits that are in DC as compared to federal law. So you might be familiar with race, color, sex, national origin, religion, disability, age, sexual orientation. But in DC, we have explicit coverage for gender identity and expression, genetic information, which you've heard about through GINA, marital status, again, exclusive to DC, matriculation, that's about being enrolled in an educational institution, covered in DC, political affiliation, personal appearance, that's covered in DC. I think it was a couple of years ago that Congress, I believe the House of Representatives, tried to introduce legislation around hair called Crown, creating respectful world for natural hair. And but in DC, it's already protected because personal appearance includes hair. Credit information covered in the Human Rights Act. It's a little bit newer, but it is covered under the Human Rights Act. Being a victim of domestic violence, sexual offense, or stalking, we call that DVSOS here at OHR. And so that's also covered under the Human Rights Act. Source of income discrimination is also protected against in DC. Being a status of victim of an intrafamily offense, that's mainly applicable to cases in housing. So again, if you're a victim of intrafamily offense, that's covered and protected under the Human Rights Act and housing. Familial status, that's about having children or minors residing with you. And so that's protected in DC. Why might that matter? If you're applying for housing and a housing provider denies your application because you have children living with you, that would be a violation of the Human Rights Act with familial status. Place of residence or business, that's also covered, and family responsibilities. So those are our 21 protected traits. Are there any questions? I know that was a lot to run through. Yes, Commissioner Fornan, did I say your name right?
Oh, yes, thank you. I wanted to give Commissioner Ewart, sorry, I should have raised my little hand, but I did want to hear from you on the frequency of certain acts and perhaps traits that you deal with. Like, what is perhaps the most frequent case that is brought? And then how long does it usually take for the victim to either see closure or a settlement?
Thank you for that question. And I'm sorry, I didn't see Commissioner, is it Ewart? Sorry, I didn't get your hand up, but I will get to you next. So that's an excellent question. We have our annual reports that we publish every year. And so that's all cited in our report. But I will tell you, as I recall it off the top of my head, they switch every other year. But the main protected traits that are fairly common throughout the years is race, sex, and disability. And Adrian will correct me if I'm mistaken, but it's usually race, sex, and disability. And they sort of change the number 1 and 3 spot throughout the different years, but those are the most cited protected traits. As to your question about timeline, it does depend on the complexity of cases. So as you can imagine, there are 21 protected traits. So the more protected traits are involved in the case, the more claims there are involved in the case, it does take longer. But we do try to schedule our mediations within 45 days of our cases being docketed. So depending on scheduling conflicts of the parties and when it does get scheduled, we try to resolve those cases, I believe, within 60 days of the date of mediation. Commissioner Ewart.
Thank you, Director, for the presentation. I didn't really know what the OHR did, so this has been enlightening. I have two questions. The first one is a two-parter. Do we have data about where like certain types of violations are happening most frequently? And like how is OHR like intentionally targeting those areas to let potential victims know that there are resources for them in these types of instances?
Great question. We do not know where the discrimination is occurring in the different wards, I imagine you mean. And so but we are working on that. And part of our project right now is to update our case management system to allow us to input that information, which we do input information. The trouble with data, as you may know, is you can input, but the system has to be able to extrapolate and analyze that information. So we're not quite there, but we are, we have our eyes on that. And so our plan next year, assuming our case management system is completed, we're doing a whole new case management system, then we can do that kind of targeted outreach that you're talking about.
Okay. And kind of like to piggyback on what you just said, like for the future, once this kind of case management system gets put in place, is there any type of advocacy that ANCs can kind of provide in order to get you guys a budget that's necessary to kind of synthesize that data and get people the help that they need as quickly as possible?
Absolutely. One of the newer requirements that OHR has had to comply with in FY22 is providing data to the council. And so we've been providing those quarterly data, and you can access those online on the council's website. But yes, once we improve upon the case management system, I'm hopeful that it'll take us light years ahead of where we are, and we can do all those wonderful targeted advocacy, outreach, education, partnering up with more community organizations, ANCs, to just expand our reach. Because my goal is, one arm is adjudication and processing complaints and enforcement, but the other arm, as we are starting to call it, is our proactive arm in trying to make sure that we're really increasing our educational efforts. Because if we don't know about the laws that are on the books, whether you're a respondent having to comply or an individual receiving the benefits of the protection, it's not as meaningful. And so that's what we're trying to do, is have more targeted outreach. And so that case management system is going to come in really handy. And yes, absolutely, if you would like to advocate for us, that'll be wonderful. But the council and the mayor have been wonderful in supporting our efforts.
Good to hear. And
so it's been an exciting year to be at OHR.
Sorry, Commissioner Ewart, I just want to make sure that we can get through as much of the presentation before we turn it over to any more questions.
Thank you. I will move along. Sorry, I tend to entertain these questions. All right. And certainly if folks want to reach out to me or Asian through the chat, we're happy to answer those questions after the presentation is done, given the sensitivity of the time constraint. All right, moving on to the next slide. And so our jurisdiction is DC government, as well as private sector respondents like nonprofits, corporations, et cetera, et cetera. What we don't cover, though, is federal government, right? So if you work for Department of Transportation, not DDOT. DDOT we do cover, DC Department of Transportation, but regular old federal Department of Transportation, we would not cover that. If you work for the EEOC, we wouldn't cover that because that's federal government. We don't cover WMATA. That's a tri-state organization, so we do not have jurisdiction over WMATA and Metro. We also don't have jurisdiction over a District of Columbia court, so Superior Court and Court of Appeals. If you work for those entities, or if you engage in services with those entities, then you find that you might be a victim of discrimination there. Unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction over those entities. All right. So a little bit about, well, how does our case processing work? And I'm so glad, Commissioner Ewart, you said you didn't know much about OHR before. So I'm really glad that we came tonight to share more information about us. So if someone were to file a complaint, this is what the process would look like. We would do what's called an intake. There's an inquiry questionnaire that you would file. We will conduct an intake to ask you a bit more questions about your claim. And if it states a claim, we would docket what's called a charge of discrimination. And then that charge of discrimination would then be served upon a respondent and then scheduled for a mandatory mediation. If the case does not resolve at mediation, then we would engage in full-blown investigation. And then the investigation would result in what's called a probable cause determination. That means we're going to be looking through the investigation whether or not there's probable cause to believe discrimination occurred. If there is probable cause, then it gets a second chance at trying to resolve the case without further adjudication. So that's called conciliation. And if conciliation fails or the case is not resolved at that point, the case will get certified for a public hearing before an administrative law judge. And so for private sector, these cases will go in front of the Commission on Human Rights. So that those are public commissioners nominated by the mayor, confirmed by the council, and that's a tribunal of commissioners will help decide the case, which is held by the ALJs. So that's the general process. So in addition to our enforcement programs, we have other programs that I just want to touch base on just a little bit about, and Asian will help me talk about them. We have language access. We have, as I mentioned before, youth bullying prevention program, and we have a new program called Creating Safer Spaces program. And that program is managed by an individual who oversees the tip wage industry compliance that I was talking about at the top of this meeting, and then the long-term care facilities training requirement that I mentioned earlier. We also have the Returning Citizens Liaison Program, where we sort of make sure that our incarcerated DC residents are educated on their rights upon exit and also just generally while they are incarcerated. There are also our communication and education arm. So as I mentioned before, we provide trainings. An example of a training that you might be interested in attending or your constituents might be interested in attending is called the Human Rights Liaison Trainings. We've had that for many years now. It's gone through many iterations. It's been revamped quite a bit, and it's a wonderful program. I really encourage you to attend that and to pass it along to your constituents if they're interested in learning more. We also have our community outreach arm that conducts things like listening labs. We're really proud of that program. We conducted that program back in 2018 and we relaunched it in 2022. So it's a new program this year where instead of me talking like this to you, it's the other way around. It's us listening to our community residents about what are some of the issues that are at the top of their minds and how either OHR can help or how government services can help them. And so it's really a connection between residents and government. We also do awareness campaigns. So with that, I'm gonna give it away to Asian to continue talking about some of our other programs so you don't just have to listen to my voice. All right, Asian, next.
So I'm just going to dive into some of our equity programs, and some of our awareness and our proactive campaigns, as Director Kine illustrated. So we do, Language Access was our first equity program, and that act was passed in 2004. So we recently celebrated 15 years of language access, and essentially is to ensure that all district residents or those seeking government services in DC can get services or access services and programs in their native language. And so it's really a compliance program as well, where we monitor different DC government agencies and ensure that they're complying with the language access mandate. All government services have access to what is called Language Line, which is an interpretation service that's provided telephonically. So no person should be turned away from a government service because of some kind of language barrier. If they're limited English proficient or non-English proficient, they should still be able to access government services. And then those kind of things, programs were expanded into what Director Kine was talking about with our Creating Safer Spaces, the bullying prevention program, and others that are like it. You go to the next slide. So this is specific to ANCs. The language access recently, there was a law that was passed in 2016 that went into effect more recently, where ANCs can be reimbursed for having interpretation services. So to make your meetings more inclusive, you can apply to have interpretation services and then be reimbursed for that. The DC Council made a fund specifically for ANCs to have that service so that you're, again, able to make meetings more inclusive and accessible to the LEP and NEP community. So if you do want more information, commissioners, you can please feel free to reach out and I could connect you with the language access program. And then you can go from there and submit an applications for those services. So as Director Kine touched on, we have numerous awareness campaigns that we've launched over the years. These included, the whole purpose was to raise awareness about, particularly vulnerable communities that may be experiencing more discrimination, and then just to bring more awareness and shed a light on those communities. So, for example, we have one that's highlighting the transgender community. It was part of our Trans Respect campaign. It actually got worldwide attention, and a university in Australia actually reached out to us and tried to duplicated that awareness campaign. So we're really proud of that initiative. We also teamed with TED Talks or TED Mid-Atlantic on an awareness campaign centered around women's equality and calling attention to equality in the workplace, especially. And so yeah, we're really proud of our awareness campaigns, and we'll continue to sort of push that awareness. So look out for those around the city in bus shelters or in the metro as we go forward. So we also do, a part of our proactive approach to education is releasing publications. So we've embarked on several different research and sort of studies over the years. We're actually, and then also guidances, which are really important to sort of the business community and the public at large, but mainly focus on the business community so that they can know about updates in our laws and have additional guidance on how to sort of the best practices on how to avoid coming to our office. Because I mean, again, a part of our mission is to eradicate discrimination. And so that's how we do that, through that proactive part. Another, we're really excited to actually be coming to hopefully the close of our transgender and qualified study, or qualified and transgender, part 2 of our study. And I don't know, Director Kine, if you have any updates on when that will be released.
Yeah, hopefully before the end of this fiscal year. But yeah, we're trying to tie that up.
Yeah, so it's a very comprehensive study where we did focus groups, and we did a lot of outreach to the transgender community to get their input on some of the trends they see especially in employment discrimination. So we're really looking forward to releasing that report, and so that there can be substantive, hopefully, discussion and then change, hopefully through DC Council or through the mayor's office through our recommendations. So finally, I just wanted to say we have a couple upcoming events. So on July 13th, next Wednesday, we have the Commission on Human Rights bi-monthly meeting. So that is open to the public if you'd like to join and find out what the commission is doing, as well as the Office of Human Rights. You feel free to join or reach out to us, and we can get you that virtual meeting link. We're also doing a few listening labs. Unfortunately, the one in July is going to be sort of closed to just SMILE participants, but we are doing, in absence of a Youth Pride event, in June, we're doing sort of a Youth Pride listening lab. So we're going to partner with SMILE, an organization that caters to LGBTQ youth. It has a housing program, actually, and we want to hear from them about some of the issues that they may see, especially in housing discrimination and employment, and then get their feedback, and then be able to make suggestions or connect them with the government services. And then in August and September, we're also having listening labs in those months. And in August is going to be family oriented. We're actually partnering with the Office of Paid Family Leave. I know they have it's universal paid family leave, but we're partnering with DOES to sort of highlight some of the protections that families have in terms of breastfeeding, and then also family leave once you do take on a new child or you have other commitments or family responsibilities that you need to take care of. And then finally in September, we're doing a listening lab on disability. And so again, if you're interested in that, you can sign up for. I'm going to drop our where you can sign up for our news updates and our mailing list. So if you feel free to click that link and join our listserv so that you can get a lot of our updates. We do not, I promise you, we do not send a ton of emails. We send a monthly newsletter with just important updates and then sort of e-blasts on events that we host. So you will not get spammed by OHR, we promise. So please feel free to sign up for that. And if you do have any questions, I'll stick around and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And that's my contact information there. So again, if you think of anything after we do log out, feel free to reach out to me and I'll do my best to answer your question or point you in the right direction. So thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. If commissioners have any questions, please raise your little hands. And then if anyone in the audience has questions, feel free to also raise your hand if you would like to come off of mute, or feel free to drop it in the Q&A. We can open it up just for a few minutes. So commissioners, if you do have questions, keep it short. Commissioner, I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier.
No, totally fine. I was under the impression that the presentation was finished, so that's why I was going all in. My question was mostly answered, and I think if I want to get more details, I can touch base with Asian about this afterwards. It's about the role that the office plays with inspecting internally other DC agencies. So I can touch base with you offline about that.
I actually have a question. I work for a company that provides preventative trainings like harassment prevention, DEI, ethics, compliance. So I'm pretty familiar with the space, also familiar with the EEOC. But I did want to ask kind of, what does the mediation process look like? I'm wondering, so someone submits a complaint or the form, and then you said mediation happens. What is there? So one, what does that look like? And then the second part of the question is, what protections are in place for that person who does submit something, and then if it is resolved in quotes during mediation?
You want me to, Director Khan, you want me to take that, or you want?
Sorry, yeah, I was flipping between screens and windows and lost my mouse to unmute myself. But yeah, I can start. So I didn't catch the first part of your question, but it sounded like you were asking what the process was like.
For mediation.
Right. Yeah, so essentially mediation is about a half a day. Sometimes they go on longer, but we have a mediator. We have 3 mediators on staff. We have contract mediators that we work with, but we have a neutral party mediator that will, just like any mediation, have an opening session that talks about the claims, that talks about each side's position, and then we'll break into caucus groups, and then the mediator will work with each side separately. And so actually OHR recently, in I want to say 2018, we had a bit of a renovation that allowed us to have more space to do that, which is really wonderful, so that we can have different rooms for different parties to sit in and discuss the case. And so that they don't have to sit in one room, and be in a contentious sort of environment the entire time. So having different rooms for that kind of opportunity is really helpful. So that's what we do. And so if the complaint is resolved at mediation, the parties can either enter into a settlement agreement that OHR has, and or they can enter into a private settlement agreement. Sometimes the parties, if they're both parties are represented, they want to enter into their own settlement agreements with different terms that OHR does not have on our template form. And so those are a couple of ways in which the case can end up being resolved through a mediation agreement. And I will note that our process is confidential in terms of mediation, even the investigation. Only the parties are able to get information about the case. The public is not able to get information about the case as far as the investigation process is concerned. Once we make a probable cause determination and that case is certified for conciliation, and the conciliation fails and it's certified for a public hearing, just as the name suggests, that case does become public. So I hope that answered some of your questions about protections.
It did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Asian, did you want to add anything else?
No, that was thorough. That's very thorough explanation.
Well, thank you again for joining us tonight. Really great presentation, really helpful, I think insightful. A lot of people, I think, weren't aware of what OHR provides, especially kind of at the very local level. So thank you so much again for joining us, and please drop your information into the chat.
Thank you so much for having us on such a short notice. We really appreciate it. It's been nice to see everyone, and I hope that we get to see each other soon in the near future and work together. Have a great evening.
I'm going to drop my information in the chat. So yeah, thank you for having us. Good night.
Thank you.
Commissioner, does that end the info session?
It does. You can take it away.
Commissioners, happy 4th of July week. Hope you had a good weekend, a good holiday, and a safe one. I call our monthly meeting to order. It's July 7th at 7 p.m. We're meeting via Zoom. Madam Secretary, if you will call the roll.
Yes. Commissioner Handerhan.
Present.
Commissioner Orlowski. Commissioner Umar. Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Kinsick. Commissioner Floyd.
Present.
Commissioner Ewart.
Present.
Commissioner Baina.
Present.
Commissioner Turner.
Present.
Commissioner Farnan. Commissioner Harris present. We have a quorum of 8 of 11.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you. The agenda contains a consent agenda that is the June meeting minutes and a resolution on restrictive reproductive rights support. We do have one agenda item to add. We'll add it at the end of the ABR agenda, and that is for El Teco and Commissioner Handerhan's SMD, and it is in support of a request from ANC 6E. Without objection, we'll move the agenda with the consent agenda. Hearing no objection, the agenda is accepted. Reports and action items. Any update on the Terrell? Commissioner Thomas isn't with it. Commissioner Baina?
So just to say that some members of that steering committee met. We heard a presentation from the director of the Terrell, Ronald Parker. I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I'm getting the slides and I'll share those with commissioners. They just did an overview of the different ways the Terrell is working to support the families and children that are staying there, particularly over the summer. engagement with DPR camps and things of that nature. So once I have those slides, I'll share them with commissioners.
Any questions? Thank you. Public Safety and Community Engagement, Commissioner Farnan.
I think Commissioner Farnan had to step away just for a moment. We were supposed to have.
We'll go in the agenda. We'll move ahead and come back to her.
She's back.
Hi, so sorry. My friend just called with a texted me emergency, but we're okay. So thanks for holding for me. Is it still okay if I go, Chair Turner?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Harris, for speaking up. We were hoping to have the new 3D commander on. I don't see him on my list here, but if he joins, we could have his updates at the end of the time. But I will share in the chat my second bullet here, the FEMS update from the Fire Battalion Chief. He shared a July presentation with me, so you can review that at your leisure. I think the most important slide for me was slide number 4, talking about an automated external defibrillator program. AED is what most people refer to these devices as, and an AED can save a life, as it says right there. So found that interesting. We'll allow you to just have a look at that as you'd like. We'll also include that on the website that is just on Google Slides right now. Then excited to share and hopefully receive support from the full commission on a sponsorship consideration for Ward 1's Jobs Not Guns Fair. This is a coalition that is putting on an in-person event at the Reef Center on July 27th. We'll begin at around 7:30 a.m. setup. I believe that doors open to the public at 8:30 a.m. And then we'll have tables, we'll have information where people can come in and just peruse at their leisure, but also we will have speakers at this event. I say we because ANC 1B, if we do approve this sponsorship, we will be a table there with information, engagement, opportunities, and the like. Of course, I will be the one manning the table for the full time, but welcome all commissioners to come and join me. Thanks to Chair Turner for making sure that this sponsorship happened, but also for engaging early with the coalition as they were building out the agenda. They are really excited to have the ANC involved, and they do have a lot of smaller coalitions who may not have been in Ward 1 prior to this engagement event. So with that, I would direct commissioners to their email. I just forwarded the sponsorship request form, which has a lot more information on this event if you would like to look before voting. But I will make a motion to support a $1,000 sponsorship for the Ward 1 Jobs Not Guns Fair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. I would like to add that this is a multi-ANC event. We're coming in at the lowest end of ANC sponsorship. 1A is the primary sponsor at $6,000. Given the amount of activity in their area, they very early on engaged with this group to make sure that that there was going to be a proper event in Ward 1 and targeted to our communities, our neighborhoods. I would like to suggest that we also advertise our internships and our admin position again, that this would be a good place to do that and get some applications and get some folks and to do those things that we envisioned in the community. Commissioners, other discussion of this? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstention? 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Quick question, Commissioner Farnan. is like promotional materials ready and available for this event yet? And if so, can we disperse those? I'd like to do some walking around my district and pass that out to folks so they're aware of it.
Yes, I sent you the PDF that's attached to the same email with the sponsorship. I saw you gave a thumbs up, so I know you received it. Have a look at that. I will also ask them if they have other promo materials. I believe that is just the agenda, like full agenda. But I will get back to you by the end of this week for that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Great.
Amanda, you should probably touch base with Dottie Wade since she's the one handling that. She's the one that gave me that file that I sent you. I know she.
Yes, I think that's the same file that I'm talking about, and she's been great. Dottie has been great. Took a bit to just connect on timing on my end with her, but it has been good. So I'll make sure that I have all the most updated information from her. But she knows that we're involved, 1B in general. Any other notes? Okay. I do want to just provide one more update or two more updates, two from the community and then one on our next meeting. So many of you attended the Banneker basketball court remodeling event earlier in June. And this was put on, some attendees might recall that Banneker hosted a Hoops for Hope event with the Hoop for All Foundation last year. That was their first in-person basketball tournament back, and it was well attended by the community, put on by a Howard alum who founded the Hoops for All Foundation. We were proud to sponsor that as an ANC 1B, and then we were also supportive of the Banneker remodel. So if you've been to the Banneker basketball courts, you have seen the amazing new basketball mural, you could say, that is on the pavement. So have a look. If you walk by frequently on Georgia Ave, just pop in and check out the new basketball court. It's very impressive. And Bradley Beal was in attendance at this event, the Wizards player. And Darren Jones, of course, had a huge hand in making it happen. He got a great photo with Bradley Beal. So just wanted to give that quick update for a positive thing that had been going on for almost 2 years, the Hoop for All Foundation trying to find funding and then make sure DPR allowed them to create this beautiful new addition to the community, and it all worked out. And then finally, wanted to share a Funk Parade follow-up. Of course, it is under a new name now, but I am still calling it the Funk Parade. And we are already sponsoring this parade, have already sent the check and everything. So all we have to do is show up, and I will share more information on when, where, and how ANC 1B will be involved, but specifically we'll have a table, same kind of engagement moment. They will be providing the table for us. So it will be a very light lift, but just wanted to put that on the radar. I'll get the exact timing and specific date just to make sure everyone has it, and I don't want to give the wrong one. The new name though is Greet and Groove, so that's exciting. That was a little event. Okay, and final thing is that the next public safety meeting will be in the morning. I'm thinking of, I have 8:30 a.m. here, but perhaps we could move it even earlier to 8 a.m. for early birds who need to get this in before the 9 a.m. workday on Friday, July 15th. Hoping that the commander would be available to join us on the 15th because he wasn't tonight, and really want to introduce him to the 1B community. So we'll keep you updated who the representative from MPD is at this walk, but really will be a forum to just talk about specifically U Street and the direct arteries off of that and what we can do to further promote public safety in that area. Okay, thank you for allowing me the time, and always open for questions.
Thank you. ZPD, Mr. Nelson.
Okay, folks, just a disclosure, I look worse than I feel. I just had surgery, so that's why my face looks like this. I'm going to start tonight's meeting by doing a little bit different than what we normally do. I'm going to ask for Chinwe Odafi from the Miniki group to raise your hand so that you can be let in. This is a group that is currently working on what is commonly known as the Howard Town Center site, which is the Recco Bond Bread building that Howard University owns on Georgia Avenue. And they are doing a redevelopment project, which we'll be voting on tonight for the HBRT piece, but we're going to give them a few minutes to talk about the program so that anyone has questions can get answered. So I don't know who from the team is gonna.
Okay, here we go. We have someone joining. I don't know if it's Brian Burke because there are multiple Brian Burke.
Yeah, they're all signed in under the same.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
It should be Chinwe Odafi.
Yes. If this is that person, then you can take yourself off of mute. There you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, I have my camera upside down. Let me try to change that. 1 second.
If you can, it's okay. Amanda was 90 degrees to the left for the first half of the meeting anyway.
Apologies, I don't know how that happened.
Oh no. Thanks, Commissioner Ewert.
I mean, there are quite a few of us on here, but I think Andy Altman and Marnique Heath will be doing the presentation for the Bond Bridge redevelopment project.
Okay, give me one. So I'm promoting, sorry. These are all, I think you all joined as the same link. So I wasn't sure because everyone is listed as Brian Burke. So I wasn't sure which one to promote.
We'll change the names.
It's all good. If there's anyone else that needs to present or join as a panelist, please raise your hand and I will promote you.
Let's get the one person who's going to speak and do a brief presentation.
Is the person presenting on, you may have your hand raised.
I think we now have both of us.
Okay, you should have access to go ahead and present. So please feel free to take it away.
Okay.
Marnie, do you have are you the?
Let me, give me 1 second to share.
Well, while we're doing that, Chinwe, do you want to maybe introduce the group and Menkidi group, and then we can go from there, and then I'll jump in.
Sure, I can do that. Apologies.
So let me just make sure that you guys are clear on your timing here. Very short window, brief, 5 to 10 minutes. Please don't do the full presentation that you've done to the ZPD because we don't need to do that.
Okay.
Just want to give them a chance to see what you're doing. And then if they have any questions before I speak to them, they can address them there. But they don't need to see the full presentation.
Okay.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. So Chinwe, apologies, I haven't got my camera, but everyone can see me. So we're Bond Brand Redevelopment team, and Menkidi Group is one of the development partners on here. We're a minority owned development firm with a hyper focus on underserved communities, and we're excited to be a part of this project. Brian Burke is also on this call, and I guess Andy, I'll take it back to you.
Okay. So my name's Andy Altman with 5 Squares Development. We're part of the team with Menkidi, 5 Squares, and Edens. We're a local developer. We developed the Liz project at 14th and R in partnership with Whitman Walker Health. I have a long history with this, as members of ZPD, Patrick knows, just shows how old I am. I started out on this project in a position when I was the planning director of the Office of Planning under Mayor Tony Williams back in 2003 when we did the Duke plan. So I'm very excited to now be on the other side, being able to actually help to implement the plan, which is always a city planner's dream to be able to actually see a plan come to fruition. So excited to be a part of this. I don't know if anyone is here from Edens, but our other partner is Edens. Edens, you probably know as developer of Union Market, and they're doing the retail development here. So we think we have a great team with Mankiti, ourselves, Edens, to create something really special. And Marnique is with Studios Architecture. And Marnique, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we can, as Patrick said, quickly, we'll jump into just some highlights of the presentation tonight.
Okay, great. Right. Okay, I'm Marnique Heath, principal with Studios Architecture. We are the architect working along with the development team to design the new development at Bond and Recco. And we're currently going through the entitlement process, which for us really is means we are going through the historic preservation review process, since both of the buildings, Bond-Bread and Recco, are landmarked. So we are, I see Brian Burke, the real Brian Burke, but we are just in the processes of meeting with the Historic Preservation Office and a number of community organizations, including yourself, to introduce the project and what we're planning to do.
So I think we'll just do for Patrick, we'll just do a few slides as we did a presentation for ZPD. We were selected by Howard University, I guess, over 2 years ago, and have spent that time, both obviously there was COVID and also agreements with Howard, and now are kind of full speed ahead. I know we heard a lot from ZPD and from community members. This has been a project that's been around for, you've heard about the town prior, what was called the town center, for many, many years. Eager to see this happen, and we're eager to move forward. So Marnique, do you have the, I don't know if you have
having technical difficulties.
I can share my screen if that's okay. I think I do have.
That would be great.
Right.
Yeah, sure. 1 second.
Yeah, my screen is just spinning on my end.
Okay. Next, I'll just say next very quickly, just cognizant of the time. Marnique, you want to start with guiding principles, and then I'll.
Sure, and there's a lot of text here, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that we developed these guiding principles, but the overriding design ideas are being inspired by the rich history and culture of this neighborhood. We want to make sure that we are open and inviting to all. There's a diverse group of people who live in and around this site, who visit locations around this site. We want to be a destination for all. And so what you'll see of our concept really is about bringing all of those people together in a way that we think is really invigorating and about the historic character and historic nature of this site.
So as I said, we looked at, went back, and the Duke plan's obviously been a very important part of the development of the area, going back to 2003 when it was produced. And I think a key part of that plan was the Bond-Bread and Recco site. And, our goal is really, as it was in the plan, it talked about very special places that have the authenticity. And obviously there are 2 National Register historic buildings. We're trying to do our best to preserve those significant elements that we can. But also a place that really is a place of gathering for the community, where we bring together all the different neighborhoods, the university, in a vibrant public space that really is both reflects the history of the community and also, the future. And so this diagram is to show that our goal right now is to open up these buildings so that you can, with a significant public space. That is the key feature here, is to move this away from being a super block that's, impenetrable, and to really make this a very urban, vibrant space. So the green that you see there is not literally to be a park, but to be an active public space. And those who've been to Union Market know what Edens has done. So that's where retail would be, restaurants, local entrepreneurs, programming, but to be a real center of community within this district. And that is our goal. And as you can see here, there are many points of access to try to open up these historic buildings, both north-south from V to W, as well as bringing people in through Georgia Avenue, making Georgia Avenue also really have transparency along the frontage, because we know how important that is in terms of the feel and the prominence of Georgia Avenue. So that space you see there is that central open space. So Marnique, you can talk a little about that.
Sure, you can go through these pretty quickly, but there are some really special features within these buildings that we want to be able to highlight through the new development. You all know the exterior of the buildings. I'm sure you've seen them for many, many years. The interior is also really interesting. That's the part of the buildings that people have seen less frequently or not at all in some cases. The trusses that are within the Recco garage, we want to be able to keep. The mushroom capital columns that are inside Bond Bread, we think are really unique and worth keeping. And so there are these features within the buildings that we want to be able to maintain to create an authenticity of the history of the buildings. This is another diagram that shows that idea of connectivity. And the primary axis, as Andy talked about just briefly, is north-south from V to W, to where W Street will be opened as a new street. You can keep going. We never intended to build the maximum density here. We always had this idea of creating something special at the heart of the site, which signaled to us right away that we needed to do something that opened up the site. And so our massing is reflective of that. It's also reflective of the idea that we want to be able to make the historic buildings the feature. And so we've applied appropriate setbacks and axial relationships between the new buildings and the existing. You see here on top, the pink and the orange represent residential bars on top of Recco, the orange on top of Bond Bread, and then the blue represents what is to be the future hotel on axis with the center of Bond Bread. A few images we can go through quickly, but this just gives you a sense of the feel of what we're trying to create here. Something very that plays on the industrial character of the site, that's funky and authentic, lots of communal spaces. But we do have also the new architecture that will need to marry with the existing. And so we think that there's room for something that's more modern and refined, simple and elegant. This is a view of the new buildings from Georgia and V, where you see the new residential on top of the Recco garage. And here you can also start to see where it says Recco Park on the left, the entry to that central public space that we've described. This is where we're opening up the Recco building and allowing people to move into the site. The other entry point to the main entry point to the site is on W from the Bond Hotel on W Street that you see there. That represents the entry from the north-south axis. But you can see here the new hotel on top of Bond Bread and the residential toward the back at 8th Street. You can keep going. Another view of that residential from 8th Street. You can see all the way down 8th Street here. And again, this is at W and 8th, so you're seeing the hotel entrance. We're being very thoughtful about creating unique conditions on each of the 4 streets that we front, and you can keep going. Just going through these quickly, you can see some of the imagery of what we're trying to create. You can keep going. These are views that we'll show you now of the interior. So where I talked about keeping the trusses inside the Recco garage. You can see how those manifest themselves as a part of this open plaza space with the residential on either side, retail on either side at the base. There is what we call a bridge element that spans between the two residential bars over the courtyard and is one of many places for art activation. But this is a view from the entry to the site from V Street, looking towards the hotel under the bridge. The hotel is in the background here of this image.
And that's, Marnique just emphasized, that's one of the places when we talked about north-south, you'd be able to traverse, from V to W, going through this public space, which will be open, and then through the hotel, which will be open, and then out to W Street, which then connects through to the neighborhood. And as Marnique said, we want to put a lot of emphasis on W and V and Georgia Avenue, opening them up.
Why don't we go to the last page and see your timeline?
There is no timeline.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about it though. Andy?
Well, I assumed there was some sort of timeline, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
And before we talk about timeline, let me just hit the elephant in the room that we're going to get bombed on. So I just, since she didn't say it in the presentation, this project is proposed to have 472 units of residential, 180 hotel rooms, 50,000 square feet of retail space, 19,000 square feet of open courtyard area, 179 parking spaces underneath, 37 affordable IZ units with an additional 20 units per Howard's agreement that we negotiated through the BZA change in the campus plan, and those will be at 60% AMI. Now you can speak about timeline.
Sure. We are, and Brian Burke's also on, so Brian, you're free to jump in. We are planning to go to HPRB in September, and Marnique probably knows the exact date, but September hearing. Anticipate there could be this probably would be a second hearing in October, November, so assume November. We are right now working with the Historic Preservation Office on whether this will have to go to mayor's agent. We are hoping it won't, but it's possible that it may have to go to mayor's agent. That's a determination about the level of demolition and preservation of historic defining features, which we're working with them on. We'll be doing that over the next month. If it has to go to mayor's agent, that then adds another 12 months to 14 months or so, 12 to 14, maybe a little bit longer even of time. If we don't have to go to mayor's agent, we are not going for any more for zoning relief or requesting anything. It would be by right. So we would be able to then move from HPRB, start moving into the building permit process, which would take another year or so until we can break ground.
Patrick, has your committee reviewed the HPRB?
Yes, we did. Anyone else have questions? Manny, can you just verify that you have actually set this up for the September 22nd meeting?
We are not, the board has not set our September meeting schedule yet. We have let the Historic Preservation Office, specifically Steve Colcott, know that is our plan. So we will be in the queue for the September meeting. Recently, we've been having, and by recently, I mean June and likely July, we have one meeting per month, which means we likely wouldn't have a carryover, but it's possible we'd have a carryover to the 29th. So September will be the 22nd or 29th of September.
Okay, so then, since you guys have technically not filed yet, I'm assuming that you'll get your case number once you file, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so then you'll need to send that to me so I can send a note.
We have a meeting with Steve next week. And so we'll see if if in advance of a filing, we can get a case number to share with you, but otherwise we'll share it once we get it, once we file in August.
Thanks. Okay, so then, Chair, are you open to questions from the committee? Up to you.
From the commission? Yes, well,
Yeah.
I know this is the type of presentation that's usually scheduled outside of the ANC meeting due to the length of them, or at the committee meeting, preferably. But at times we do special for commissioners. Patrick, have we gone, when will you bring us the HPRB?
Tonight. That's why they're making their presentation.
Okay, even though it hasn't been filed?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, commissioners, questions on the development? Tonight we'll be voting purely on the historic piece of it. Commissioner Bana.
Yeah, I'll just be very quick. I don't have anything to say on the historic piece. I just want to make a comment that the number of affordable units seems very low in proportion to the total number of units. Are there any plans, desire to pursue financing to up those units, whether it's from historical or from Housing Production Trust Fund? Has that been discussed? Is that ship sailed? Just kind of disappointing, those numbers, if anyone can speak to that.
Andy,
Andy, I'm happy to.
Howard is adding in 20 of the original, which is prior to your time on the commission, but we negotiated through the extraction of these parcels that are now being developed, an agreement with Howard University that they would supplement affordable housing above and beyond the IZ requirements, and the target that we set was 100 or more. And as of right now, they're at approximately 80 or so that between the different projects. So this one is taking, Howard is putting out of his own pocket, so to speak, 20 units, and they're doing them at 60% AMI, which is lower than the IZ, which is at 80%.
But to be clear, there's no push to get any sort of like 30 to 50% AMI in this project specifically.
Well, that was addressed at the committee level. They can respond directly to that, but as always, I am front and center to pushing that button.
Do you want to respond quickly?
Sure. Yeah, the affordability levels are really here being driven by Howard, and the RFP that they put out. They dictated the levels of affordability that they wanted us to pursue. They're still the landowner and the ground lessor, or ground lessor to us, and so they're really driving that decision. And as Patrick discussed, they negotiated prior agreements with the community to the levels of affordability that would be included in these projects. So we don't really have
this is a multi-year building.
Sure. That's fine. I understand. I just wanted it for the larger community that doesn't attend the 3 hours EPD meetings to understand why a large new building is going up and there's not more than 37 units of affordable housing. I just wanted it to be clear for the community. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to put a fine point on that, it will actually be 57 units. So 37 is the IZ amount, and then there'll be an additional 20 on top of that. So 57 total.
Okay, thank you.
What quick question on the IZ, what is that MFI breakdown? Is it all 80% for the 37 that you are responsible for?
Andy, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's all 60%.
Yes.
Actually. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the chart showed 60 and showed the breakdown in that that sheet that had the statistics about the site.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, so appreciate the explanation of it. So for tonight's meeting, the commission needs to vote on the project at 2112, 2114 Georgia Avenue, which is going to go in front of HPRB in September. They are asking for support of their plan for design, concept, and massing for the redevelopment of the historic site into retail, housing, hotel, and public space. Committee reviewed this project and is recommending that the ANC support the project, new and historic structures at the Recco Bonbury building, concept, design, and massing, and support the board moving expeditiously as possible to bring this project to the community as quickly as possible.
Is there a motion?
This is in Amanda Farnan's SMD. So Amanda.
I'll move to support it.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Patrick, this is just for the historic structures, and will this determine whether or not it gets to the mayor's agent, or will that be?
No. It has to go through HBRB, and that's why we put in our recommendation, supporting it moving as possible, as quickly as possible, so they understand that we want them to advocate strongly that it not go to the mayor's agent and do whatever they need to do to get that. If it goes to the mayor's agent, that's out of our control, and the ANC doesn't have any input on that.
Okay, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Abstention? One abstention?
Okay, so, okay. So then, I would just ask that
Harris, could you give me the tally for that?
it's 701. 7 in favor, no against, 1 abstention.
Okay.
If you would just let me know when you get the case number so I can transmit the referral, because I don't want to do that until you guys get on the docket.
Absolutely. We will do that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. We're excited to move this forward. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item that needs the commission's vote tonight is a project located at 733 Euclid Street in an RF1 zone. It's in 1B03. This is also a HBRB case that's going to be held on July 28th.
Commissioner Nelson, I apologize. This is 3rd District Commander James Boltler from MPD. As exhilarating as all these zoning stuff is, I apologize for coming in late. I was actually in another meeting. Is it possible to go ahead and give you guys our brief of MPD's crime stats so I can jump off and leave you guys to all this important business?
Sure, and I think they're going to see you again on Friday the 15th. Go ahead.
Thanks, Commander, for joining. Yes.
Yeah, no problem, guys. So what I would ask you guys to consider is joining our CAC meeting monthly. The last Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. I hold a hour-long meeting where I give the community all the crime stats, updates to all our crimes and so forth. The reason I ask that is you can imagine how many different SMD meetings there are, and there's not really enough time in the day and days of the week to be able to get that done, and also do the things that are necessary to keep the 3rd District safe. So I will start paring back on these meetings and ask my SMDs to start attending the CAC, so it's kind of a one-pot shop. So today, what I'd like to do is just give you a very brief update on overall crime in the district. Today, I met with the chief of police, the executive chief of police, during a crime briefing, which we do weekly, where we go over, the pros and the cons of what happened this week, our anticipation of our deployment and so forth. Currently, the District of Columbia has a 1% increase in overall crime compared to the exact same time last year. I can tell you, as a district commander, it feels different. It feels more violent. It feels like crime is up a lot more than 1%. I just took over as your 3rd district commander about 2 months ago. Prior to this, I've been a police officer for about 23 years, ranging from assignments from being on the SWAT team to narcotics detective to sergeant, lieutenant, captain, inspector of various different proactive agencies or units throughout the city. I spent much of my time in the major narcotics branch doing high-level Title III wiretap investigations, taking down drug lords here in the city, stuff that most people don't hear about because it happens behind the doors. Nevertheless, I'm super excited to be back to 3D. I was here as a vice sergeant way back in the day when we still had vice units that were out operating within the districts. So to have the opportunity to come back here to a district that I really had an affinity to when I was here, I really, really appreciate that opportunity. So far this year, the 3rd district year to date has accumulated 9 homicides. That also includes the Thomas Circle shooting that happened within the homeless encampment about a month and a half ago, which was recently ruled as justified by the U.S. Attorney's Office, given the fact that the subject that was deceased actually entered that tent with a firearm with the intention of robbing the person who was in the tent. Struggle ensued, the gun went off. U.S. Attorney's Office decided not to prosecute the young man that was inside the tent and then had fled. So therefore, that's that one. The most recent homicide that you guys are probably aware of was at 8th and R Street, where a young man named Blue Bryant, who was 15 years old, was shot while riding a motorbike right at the intersection of 8th and R Street at the base of the platform of the metro. I was out working that night with my team. I literally was on the scene probably within about 30 seconds of the shots being fired. I could say this, our officers did a really good job trying to save this kid's life. I mean, we had tourniquets and gauze on this boy's head, within, seconds of him falling to the ground. We were able to obtain CCTV footage very quickly that was able to show us that a vehicle had driven south on 9th Street up to the intersection of R, saw him coming down this R Street on a motorbike, intentionally fired upon him, shot him, and then turned as they fled the scene and fired back towards the Metro stop, where if anybody drives by there recently, you've seen I've had Metro Transit kind of posted up in that parking lot. What just happened on this exact night, Metro Transit wasn't there. They were out driving around. Where their vehicle would have been parked in that parking lot, a pickup truck got struck. And what we found was it was a group of about 4 or 5 guys from the Lincoln Westmoreland neighborhood crew kind of standing behind that vehicle using it for shield, which makes sense why the suspect would fire back upon them. And I'll explain kind of my theory of why he did in the first place. In addition to the young boy being shot, there was a young man who was literally walking to the Metro to go out and enjoy an evening in the district, was struck by gunfire on the side. Fortunately, he was not an intended target. He survived. He actually was treated and released from the hospital within about an hour. It was a flesh wound to his love handle. Now, why did this happen? So many of you that are DC residents that lived here your whole life, like I did, I was born and raised in DC, know that we don't have a lot of nationalized gangs in DC, right? There's not a lot of Bloods and Crips and MS-13. MS-13 maybe, but no Bloods and Crips and LA gangbangers, right? What we do have, indicative of the District of Columbia, is neighborhood crews, right? These are geographically based traditionally. Where I grew up at Fort DuPont Circle over in Ward 7, the kids in my block that I played ball with nowadays are the kids that go out together and commit crimes together. They're the ones that do carjackings together. They deal drugs together. And they call themselves, whatever that block may be, a crew, right? So 8th and R is the Lincoln Westmoreland crew. Why? Because that's the name of the apartment complex. Now, traditionally, as I was coming up through the ranks out on the street, fighting crime, as a detective and an officer, when crews had individual beefs with each other, we kind of foreshadowed, saw it coming. We were able to, we had informants within these crews or neighborhoods that were able to tell us things were heating up. With the proliferation of social media and these damn cell phones, they get on these cell phones and go back and forth and rap videos and diss each other literally within 5 minutes of a video dropping on YouTube or on Instagram. These kids are in a car driving through the opposing crew's neighborhood and firing guns out the window. It's almost impossible for us to interdict that type of social media banter and get ahead of it ahead of time. Like I said, back in the day, we could actually get to the neighborhoods and kind of set up and almost have a defensive posture. The social media has made it almost impossible for us to do. Now, what we do have officers in our intelligence division that do nothing but scrub social media. But as you can imagine, with a shrinking police force, and there's 1,000 crew members or more in this city. We don't have that many. That's 1/3 of our entire police department, right? So we can't dedicate somebody to follow all the social media all the time. What we do ask is that folks that are following social media, if you guys see or hear anything on these social media sites, Instagram, Facebook Live, and you guys see them flashing guns, and we've been really successful. Even family members have been turning in their kids and their nieces and nephews because they know that if they don't do something, these kids are going to go out and get shot and killed, right? A suspect today is a victim tomorrow. So in any event, in this instance, that's exactly what happened. There's a young man about a year and a half ago up in 4D or not Lincoln Westmoreland, LaDroit Park, that killed a rival gang member from the 3500 crew, which is 3500 block of Georgia Avenue, kind of Georgia, New Hampshire. The really ready gang is what they call themselves. Well, this 2-year banter back and forth, there's probably been no less than about 50 shootings as a result of that one. It started a ping pong game back and forth that has not stopped. Some of these kids that are shooting today were probably 10 or 11 or 12 when this first happened, are now 14 or 15 and they're trigger pullers. So about the same weekend that we had this young boy shot at 8th and R Street, that spun off. And what happens is there'll be spats. There'll be a week or two of shootings back and forth, and it'll stop for a month. And then something will kick off and it'll start up again. Well, this night, that 8th and R shooting was the first one. In retaliation for that, we believe the Lincoln Westmoreland crew went up to Georgia Avenue, to New Hampshire Avenue, and shot up a block up there. They actually went all the way up to Kennedy Street and shot up the 900 block of Kennedy Street. About an hour after that, Kennedy Street, we believe, came back down to the 3rd District, went to LaDroit Park and shot 2 people in the parking lot of LaDroit Park. One of which got out of the car and started firing back at the car that had just shot it down. We ultimately ended up identifying that person and arresting him and getting a gun off of that person. About 30 minutes later, back up in 4D in the 800 block of Quincy, a party had just let out from an apartment complex, rooftop party, and a young lady who literally was scheduled to go to college the very next day for orientation was shot and killed by a stray bullet that was intended for a crew member who was standing out in front of that apartment building. So as you can see, this stuff goes back and forth very quickly. In retaliation to that, they came down to 14th Street at CHV, Columbia Heights Village, and shot up an apartment building. We put out some video to the public, literally with a police car in the backdrop. So for the grace of God, nobody got hit in that shooting, nor did our officer. But as you know, a week prior to that, at 14th U Street, with 30 cops standing out in the intersection, we had an officer, a young man killed and an officer shot that was standing right next to him. So these young boys, and I say young boys not to be sexist, but let's face it, most of the trigger pullers in our city are young men. They have no regard for public safety, nor themselves for that matter. Now I say all this to tell you that our deployment, relative to my officers and where I put them, is very intentional and it's very strategic. If I had enough officers, I'd have one on every corner with the lights on, right? It'd look like a Christmas tree out there. But in reality, one of the things as a district commander, I need to be with you guys is honest and transparent. We have a shrinking police force. Just in the 2 months I've been here, I've had 5 officers resign and walk out the door, where they just said, you know what, we're done. We're going to change careers and do something else. We can't hire people fast enough to make up for those losses, right? We're also having people retired, at an alarming rate, right? People are hitting that 25-year mark, which is eligibility for retirement, and they're leaving. My dad, my granddad, they all did 35 years on the police department. Those types of officers that are staying that long, we're not really seeing that anymore, right? So our attrition is moving in a downward turn. Because of that, I have less people to deploy to the street at any given time on all 3 shifts, 7 days a week, which means some of the things that we're used to doing as a police department, we've had to scale back. You'll see less foot patrols, right? Because I need an officer now to be able to go from 8th and R to 13th and Columbia in a matter of, a minute versus, being on foot and taking having officers spread out where I'd be able to accommodate that. So our strategy has changed just a bit. Now, not to say you won't see officers on foot, but it's going to be intentional in certain neighborhoods and certain areas. In years past, you've seen officers sit on certain corners with their overhead lights on, and they kind of were a fixed post or, kind of a constant to that neighborhood. About 9 months ago, Chief Conti made the decision that just was not prudent for us anymore, given our attrition. So we have moved to what we call hotspot policing. Our hotspots here in the 3rd district are, not inclusive, but I'll tell you some of them. LaDroit Park, Lincoln Westmoreland, 5th and O, 7th and O, Columbia Heights Village, right? Those are North Capitol and O Street. Those are 6 that we know if we don't have a presence at some point or another, somebody's going to get shot, right? Somebody's going to do something nefarious. Somebody's going to get hurt. So if we don't have the manpower to sit there at all time and babysit these fools, what we've done is implemented hotspot policing, where we will make sure that our officers are rotating. Every officer working rotates through that area at least once an hour. And in that hour, they pull up, they park, they turn their overhead lights on, they get out of the car, they engage, whether it's with the dope dealers on the corner, with one of you in the block, just, having a conversation, writing parking tickets. I really don't care what they do. I just want them doing something outside of their car and engaging with the public one way or the other. So our thought is, if we do these hotspot policing checks every hour, and we do them randomly, so it's never the same time, every hour, it puts the bad guy on kind of an uneven playing field where they never know when we're going to pop up on. Knock on wood, since I've been here in 2 months, we've had about a 60% reduction in shootings and about a 45% reduction in robberies. So that leads me to my next crime stats. So I talked about the homicides. Our shootings are down about 25% compared to this time last year. And I attribute that reduction to the last 2 months of deployment. When we switched from doing these fixed posts, when I got here 2 months ago, they were still parking cops on corners, in these areas. And there was about 15 locations where they had cops parked, not doing anything. Well, I can tell you that. How many of you guys would want to go to work, whatever you do, and sit in a car for 15 hours with no stimulus, right? You'd get bored, and what would you resort to? Well, when I say you, I mean these young kids. They would resort to sitting on their phone, watching Hulu or Netflix, and not being productive. That's not my bag of tea, right? So what I want them doing is parking, getting out of the cars, and engaging people when they're in these areas, and get back in the car and keep moving. To me, if they're in a police car driving around patrolling, they're deterring more crime than just sitting on the corner where our bad guys know what they're doing and know, they can go around the corner and commit a crime. The next stat would be robberies. Currently, and this is an insane number, we've had 200 robberies year to date in the 3rd district. That's up about 30% from about 155 last year. Either of those numbers to me are mind blowing. However, we are in a unique situation. We are the city's nightlife, right? It's not really fun to go to Georgetown anymore. It's fun to come to U Street. It's fun to go to Adams Morgan. And when I say that, I mean, it's fun for everybody from all over the city. And what we're seeing is a lot of folks from east of the river, from PG County, Montgomery County, they're coming to U Street and they're bringing all their vices, all their problems, all their beefs, right? When you have U Street culminating where we have people from 37th Place, Lincoln Heights, Clay Terrace, crews from 40, all these people come to one place to hang out, it's inevitable they're going to meet each other in one of these bars or really on the street when they're walking about, and their feuds spew up. So one of the things we did about a month ago, I started screaming and yelling, raising red flags about violence on U Street, which is that Shaw area, right? I didn't want that culminating into something that was, more than what it was going to be, because we had a couple stabbings, we had a shooting at the America's Best Wings. I was able to convince the mayor's office to create a nightlife task force, which we're going to be deploying from now until Labor Day. And that means every Friday and Saturday night, you're going to have every DC government agency that has an acronym you can think of is out there. DDOT, DPW, DBH, us, the fire marshal's office, ABRA, DCRA, and they're out there from 8 at night to 4 o'clock in the morning. So the last couple of weekends I've been out there with them, and I'm going to tell you, they've come to the table. It's the first time in almost 20 some years I've been on this department I've ever seen a government approach like this actually work, right? Because usually everybody says they're going to do something, but no one really shows up. They've all shown up, and I attribute that to Deputy Mayor Geldart, or Public Safety Deputy Mayor. He has been really like hammering the nail on this. And I can tell you, like last weekend, DPW came in and towed about 50 cars. They ticketed about 200. The object here, when I helped create this, was I want to make U Street a vibrant place for businesses to thrive. But all those folks that are hang-arounds, that are nefarious and coming down on ATVs and just parking outside in their cars, pulling out liquor bottles and sitting in lawn chairs, they got to go, right? And we got to, as a government, make them uncomfortable to not want to be there, right? So I told you before, I don't have enough manpower to go in there and lock up everybody drinking in public. But what I can do is tow your car, right? So now you got to pay to get your car out, ticket you. Now you got to pay, the tickets. We've got DDOT down there blocking off with traffic cones and
Commander.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just jump in? This is Commissioner Farnan. Thank you so much for this comprehensive update. I think that I deeply appreciate.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to chime in with like one question from my point of view, and perhaps this will inform what I'm hosting on July 15th, which I've talked to Jackie about. And I would love to have folks like perhaps contact information for this nightlife task force who will be specifically in the U Street area. And then we as commissioners can better understand, okay, hey, what are we looking for? You just laid out great examples, but of course, I don't want someone getting locked up for drinking on the street. I do want someone to feel uncomfortable doing that. So I want to understand how we can engage, DCRA, DDOT, and folks who maybe are looking for red flags, but also share, okay, who perhaps might just need help getting home, being able to differentiate that.
Understood. I'll elaborate more on the 15th. So let me just cut back and then I'll to crime stats, and then I'll call it and let you guys ask me any questions. Violent crime overall in the 3rd district is up a mere 14%. Compared to what other districts are seeing right now, that's not that bad. And then our property crime, we're down 11%. The highest crime that's up 5% would be that of theft from autos, right? That's a big deal in 3D. A lot of folks inundate that Shaw area on weekends, and from Friday to Sunday, we just have an immense amount of car break-ins. And at the end of the day, like I said, I'm going to be transparent with you. That's not an easy crime to catch somebody in the act. Last weekend, we caught one guy breaking into a car, but we had probably about 25 car break-ins, right? Now, we can't attribute all of them to him because we can't prove it. But it's just it's such an easy crime to commit. And the things people are stealing out of these cars aren't just purses and laptops. I mean, we're getting a gun stolen out of a car, from some dope that puts their gun in their glove box or under their seat when they go to the bars at least once a weekend, right? And we know where that can lead. So I'll wrap up. I'll give you a better brief on the nightlife task force on the 15th. So I'll leave it at that. Anybody
Okay, amazing, Commander. Thank you so much. I do see Commissioner Vanna with the hand up. I don't know if he has a question for you.
Yeah, there was a lot in that update to respond to, some of which I found kind of objectionable, but we can discuss it on the 15th at that community event. I'll just say here, so are you saying that you pledged to us as the ANC that your officers will no longer be sitting in their cars blocking the bike lanes while on their phones? Is that what you're saying here tonight?
I hope not. And that's one of those things, if you're having, those observations, I'm the person to bring that information to, right? So that I can address it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be parked in bike lanes. And the reality is we give officers phones when they come on the police department because they're paired to their body worn cameras. So our officers now do reports on their phones. They can run fingerprints on their phone. So there's a lot of things they could be doing. Now, granted, you walk up an officer and you see them on Netflix or Hulu, I need a phone call because I need to address that so it doesn't happen again, right? If they're blocking bike lanes and sitting idle, by all means, please let me know about that so I can address that.
Will do. Will do.
That's not the type of behavior that I want to accept here in 3D.
Will do. We see it and hear about it from constituents. Thank you.
I think
Okay.
all the questions we have for this evening for you. And we look forward to, you normally have a lieutenant or a captain that joins us at our meetings. Occasionally the commander joins, but we always have a representative attend. So I know that the lieutenant has moved on to a new assignment.
Lieutenant Markowitz was normally here. Yeah. So we're working with Jackie from the community engagement portion to identify who is the next lieutenant who would be able and available to join. Chair Turner, just so you're aware.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I'll see you on the 15th.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Nelson, second item.
All right, folks, I was on a phone call. All right, so let's get back to what the item that needs to be voted on. This is 733 Euclid Street. It's in 1B03. This is an HBRB case that's going to be held on July 28th. They came to the committee with a proposed review of a plan and concept for the redevelopment of the site in connection with the proposed application review for historic landmark designation under the National Association for Relief of Destitute Colored Women and Children. The committee has reviewed their design and is recommending that the ANC support the historic landmark designation and conversion of the property, retaining the old building with additions on either side, with further consideration to the railing at the balcony to emphasize the solidness of the bays and additional refinements to the front cornice and roof edge. This project will be coming back to the ZPD once again, because they also have to go to BZA, but right now we're only dealing with the HBRB historic review piece of it. And there may be a couple of people in the audience that, say that again, Jane? You muted yourself, James.
This is the whole building.
The whole building, along with some additions on either side. They are retaining the old building, the structure. And I will, like I was saying, there's a couple of people in the audience that may want to make comments, but I'll leave that up to you whether you want to. I'm not even sure that they do, but I recognize a couple. Any questions?
Commissioner Mather, this is in your district. It's been discussed a number of times with mixed emotion around how much of it should be historic. And I know that Commissioner Ewart has also, as ZPD, been involved. And would either of you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I'll hop in. This has been an kind of interesting and evolving case. We've seen it at the ZPD meeting several times. The most recent proposal has taken a lot of feedback from from many stakeholders, including the ZPD committee, the public, the folks who originally wanted this to be historically preserved, as well as previous board members of the I can't remember the organization that was there most recently, and I think overall we've gotten, at least architecturally, a better outcome than what we initially had, and I think that it would make sense to and I would be happy to make said motion to move forward with the ZPD committee recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is saying second. Discussion,
Who seconded it? Sable?
Luther,
Oh,
Commissioner Umar. All those in favor, aye.
yeah, I guess there's nobody in the attendees that wants to say anything. I don't see any hands.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? One abstention.
So the motion carries then. So then that concludes my presentation this evening, and our next meeting will be on August 18th, which is Monday, August 18th.
July 18th.
July 18th?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm a month ahead. July 18th. Thank you for correcting me, Sable. I looked at the wrong page on the calendar.
Economic Development, Commissioner Handerhand.
Sure. Thanks so much, Chair Turner. Hi, everyone. Happy to provide an update from the Economic Development Committee this month. I don't see anyone from Main Streets or Clean Streets, but I do have a couple updates that encompasses their work. I'm going to start with just some of the committee updates. At each meeting, we try to provide an update on some of the projects in the neighborhood. So starting with Reeves, we don't have any update at this time, but the DEMPED continues to do the advanced planning for the revitalization of the Reeves Center, which includes relocation of a couple essential functions that are currently at the site, both through DGS as well as OCDO and DDOT. The development team will be chosen after those relocations occur. Grimkey, which is another site the committee and this ANC has been really involved in for a long time, is about to start the phase two development of that project. It's going to begin in mid-July, and it focuses on the former site of the African American Civil War Museum, which has relocated and will become predominantly housing. There is also a new project on our radar, which is not in 1B right now. I just want to be really clear that it's in our neighboring ANC, but will be part of 1B once the redistricting lines take effect next year. That's what we're calling what they're calling the 1617U project. It's currently an MPD and FEM site. And there's actually a public meeting on July 14th to talk about that will basically serve as a public surplus hearing. I can send details. I'll drop them in the chat for anyone who's interested in joining. That should be an interesting thing to keep on folks' radar. I think we're going to talk about redistricting a little bit later, but the final Ward 1 ANC maps are public, and glad to have that clarity for future planning. And we also don't have an update on the HFA site on Florida at 9th, which is owned by the Housing Authority, and they're going to keep us up to date as they get further approvals for that project. At our last meeting, we had a guest presentation from Rick Amaretto, who's the executive director of the DC Bid Council. I'd encourage folks to look at the broader committee notes if they're interested in bids in DC. I will drop in the chat after this a little fact sheet about the DC bids that I found really interesting. And we had Rick come and talk to the committee to talk about what it might look like if the U Street corridor was interested in supporting a bid. Now, that's not something the ANC would sponsor. It is a business driven and community driven process, but it was brought to us as something to explore and provide a forum for people to learn more about. I would also add that the U Street Main Street has sent around an update that included information on the U Street Safety Initiative. This was referenced earlier in the meeting tonight. There is a survey link in that update that would encourage anyone in the U Street corridor to fill in. The U Street Safety Initiative is being run out of Councilmember Nadeau's office, so her representative may want to speak to that later. But there is also a virtual roundtable on this Saturday. This is kind of it touches a number of the committee's work. So just wanted to share it here, on behalf of everyone so that they are able to plug in there. And again, this is the link I will drop into the chat. Nothing to vote on this time, but I will say that our next meeting is Thursday, July 21st. We've invited Howard University to come and join us to talk about a number of the developments that they have in the pipeline. We heard about one of them earlier today, but all are welcome at 6:30, and you can register on ANC 1B's website. Happy to ask to fill any questions that the commissioners or community might have.
Just want to clarify on the V Street projects that those are very important and things that we looked at as a holistic approach to the U Street corridor. And that will be included in the new 1B on January 3rd. The reason to be proactively involved now is because it will be part of your responsibility next term. And we know how long these projects take. 1C has a particular interest in the site and the redevelopment. They have concerns over parking and have a keen interest in a Adams Morgan Library being located on the site. So those are always potentials for whatever the naming, for the space between the fire department, the police department, and the floors above it as a buffer floor. So there are opportunities there. And the commissioners who represent that area should also be aware as much as they can. Transportation, Commissioner Ewart.
Yes, thank you. We have two resolutions to vote on today. The first one is a Bryant Street bike lane study request. Bryant Street is currently not on the Move DC bike priority network plan. However, with planned redevelopment of the area in between Sherman Avenue and Vermont Avenue and Georgia Avenue, that will be further connecting Bryant Street between those two primary arterial roads. The Transportation Committee feels like this is a potential east-west connector that could be useful for the bike network, for those who ride bikes in the city. A lot of that the east-west connections are probably the most difficult, and this is a potential area. So our resolution is looking at ways that we could do that, making sure that DDOT coordinates with Howard University in order to do that, and also making sure to look at road widths. Our very amateur analysis shows that we don't think that there would need to be any work done to the roads in order to do this. It could be simply done with paint, but we just want to make sure that DDOT is just confirming that and able to show that in a future study. I'll make the motion to move forward with the Transportation Committee recommendation to support the Bryant Street bike lane study request.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? All those in favor, aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention.
All right, and the second item that we have a vote on is about 8th Street Northwest traffic orientation study. This is specifically for the 1900th block of 8th Street. However, at that meeting, we wanted to be clear that we would be working with the Shaw Main Streets in order to confirm that this would not kind of be something that would kind of go against their goals and make sure the voice is heard of businesses who operate on that block. And we have unfortunately not been able to confirm that. And so to just honor the requests and concerns of Transportation Committee members who brought this up, I'm going to make a motion to defer this resolution to the August meeting so that we can have adequate time to coordinate with Shaw Main Streets to just make sure everyone's voice is heard and we're not acting too rashly with this one.
We can just defer it.
Okay, we'll just defer it. Patrick's hands up.
Just a comment, Max, that you also need to coordinate, because part of changing the direction on the street in the district requires that the residents that are on that street concur with that. It's not just Main Street. They really don't have the power to do that. The ANC can recommend it, but it has to go through. So you're gonna have to coordinate with, I would assume, Main Street guy, let Alex deal with this, but he's got to get a petition signed by all of the houses on that block that they're okay with the street being changed.
Alrighty, sounds good. Thanks, Patrick. And that's it for Transportation Committee. The next meeting is going to be next week on July 13th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for transportation? ABR. Commissioner Bana.
Yes, thank you. So the ABR committee met. We had a uncharacteristically light agenda. It was a little bit of a lull in the restaurant renewals. That will not be the case this month. We have a bunch that have come through, so we have some to discuss. But just so that everyone's aware of the process, the restaurant renewals are almost wrapping up now, and then tavern licenses are later this year, due in September. So that'll be a preview for later this year, and it will potentially carry over into 2023. To support those efforts, please utilize the feedback form that's on our website, the ABR committee webpage. So if you have concerns or you have compliments about a ABRA licensed establishment in our ANC, you can record that in the feedback form on our website. It's also linked on the agenda here. Time I wrote this agenda, we did not have a matter to vote on, but as Chair Turner mentioned, we had a late add to the agenda that we approved at the beginning. That is in relation to an establishment called El Techo, which is technically an ANC 6E, which is across from 1B01, which is Commissioner Hanahan's district. 6E is protesting the renewal of El Techo in attempt to update the settlement agreement there. And we were asked if, as an abutting ANC, we would join on to those efforts. Commissioner Hanahan, do you want to speak to that before you make your motion?
Sure. Just a few contextual details. First of all, I've said in this space before, I am not a fan of protests for protest's sake. Most of our businesses near 1B01 have been really great neighbors, and this is a situation in which noise has been an ongoing issue for several years. I also don't take for granted the fact that this is a 6E establishment, and want to be really thoughtful about respecting the 6E process here. Part of the reason we couldn't get this in front of the committee to discuss before this evening was that 6E just decided to protest earlier, or just voted to protest earlier this week. They will be the lead protestant, and we will just be filing a protest in support. We have their support to do that. I've heard from more neighbors about this issue than probably any other issue in the past couple months, and so want to make sure that we can get this in before the July 25th petition deadline. I'm happy to share any more about the history here, or just go ahead and make a motion, whatever you, Eric, or the chair recommends.
I'll just add that we have gotten a few complaints through our ABR committee feedback form related to this establishment El Techo, and we've it's one of those where it's right on the border of the two ANCs, and so kind of both ANCs have heard quite a bit about it. So that's all I'll add. I think you're free to make the motion.
Okay. I'd like to motion the full ANC joins ANC 6E in protesting the renewal of an alcoholic beverage license for El Techo at 606 Florida Ave Northwest, based on concerns of peace, order, and quiet.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion and a second. Although I don't particularly like when we make a cross-border, as we don't like cross-border into our territory. This came directly from 6E as a request, so it does have it is unique in that way. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Great. Larry, I'll write up that transmittal and send it to Abra. And that is all of my updates. Our next meeting is Wednesday, July 20th at 7 p.m. You can register on anc1b.org. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Just quick updates administratively. The redistricting has been completed and the maps are online. We're anxious to see how the system worked in automatically generating the verbiage delineations of each SMD that would match the maps themselves. ANC commissioner petitions for the election in November will be available on 7/20. And they are due back, I believe, on 8/11. I believe there's
8/10.
8/10. 8/10 is roughly 3 weeks to get 25 signatures. And the process, you must go to BOE, submit your paperwork, do your oath as a candidate, pick up your petitions, your materials, and obtain live signatures, and 25 of them this time. And turn them in before close of business, 5 p.m., I believe, on 8/10. Sadly, we did not do an education campaign. The council did not fund nor sponsor a campaign to notify residents of the changes to the ANCs and to the potential impact to each ANC, particularly in our ward of creating a new ANC, 1E. They also remain silent on providing financial support to establish the new ANCs throughout the district. So there will be probably additional legislation coming that will be targeted at funding and setup of new commissions. They have also still pending the hire of a new permanent executive director for the OANC. With that, I hope that, as often is the case, that the ANCs do get elected and they do function at a level, and they do learn and grow into the roles. Let's now go to the announcements. Is Latoya on? We have a new representative from the Office of the Mayor, Jared Allen. Jared, who is in a cool location, looks.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It is pretty cool here. I'm still down at the office. It's pretty cool. I don't have many updates, but I did want to welcome myself to everybody. It's been a lot going on, but I do plan on getting a one-on-one with each and every one of the members of the committee and figuring out how best I could serve as anything you may need up there in the ward. Not only do I work as the Ward 1 liaison, filling big shoes from Anthony Moore. I am a group born and raised in the ward. Went to Marie Reed as a kid. Went to Lincoln before it turned to Czech. My dad raised me up there in Adams Morgan. I worked on U Street. So I'm already engulfed in the neighborhood. I know so much about it. I have a lot of family around here, so I'm just ready to hit the ground running and look out for phone call or email from me coming in the upcoming weeks. And yeah, that's what I got for today. I'll put my name and email and number in the chat for you guys, and you guys could have that and reach out to me anytime you may need it.
And welcome. And remember, we're a commission. An advisory neighborhood commission.
Gotcha.
Nightlife culture. Commissioner Harris, is they on?
I do not see them. Hold on one second. I do not see them.
I'm seeing a comment in the chat from a Solana. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Or Salima. Oh, okay.
Can you raise your hand? Wait, hold on. I see you actually. There we go. I am trying to promote you as a panelist. You will need to accept. There you go. Okay. Oh, and okay, hold on. Okay. Salima, there we go. Up. Okay. You declined, so I will not. Do I need to promote anyone else?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Do I need to promote anyone else?
Salima, Khalid, and then Jennifer McCahill, please.
Okay, I tried to promote. Yeah, quick comment. I did try to promote Salima, but they declined.
Okay, if you could go ahead and make comments.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say hi to everybody. My name is Solana Vandernet. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office of Life and Culture. Thank you for letting me join your call tonight. Just wanted to give you guys some quick feedback about myself. I was in the nightlife industry for over 11 years. I started off as a promotional event planner for DT Nation, which was a promotional event planning company. And we did many different activations all across the U Street corridor, and then worked my way up to be the director of operations. Then in 2016, I created my own business, Soul Support, which created administrative support, event planning, and project management solutions for businesses in the nightlife industry. And during my tenure with my business, we were able to work very closely with different government agencies to help our clients navigate through ABRA licensing, basic business licensing, CBE certifications, and again, during the pandemic. Really, when Mayor Bowser had created many different funding opportunities for the nightlife establishments to continue to move forward during the pandemic. I was also worked very closely with Hook Hall Helps. I was a program manager for the Hook Hall Helps initiative, where I created and executed the distribution of nearly 10,000 meals and supply kits to over 1,100 nighttime economy workers who were affected by the pandemic. I was also an opera license manager for almost 6 years at various different nightclubs. So I look at this position as a culmination of over 11 years of knowledge, experience, and relationships. So that being said, just to give you guys an update as far as the Mayor's Office of Life and Culture, to piggyback off of what Commander Buller was saying earlier, last Thursday, Mayor Muriel Bowser announced the multi-agency nightlife task force. And we are part of that initiative. So we are working very closely with the Office of the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety and Justice, MPD, DPW, DDOT, DCRA, ABRA, and FEMS. And we are operating cohesively and effectively to combat the public safety issues, as we all know that DC is facing. DC is open and we are experiencing a higher volume of activity in our nightlife corridors than in 2019. And so the task force was established to strategize a significant coordinated government response to ensure public safety in 3 specific corridors. The first one is the U Street corridor, the Connecticut Avenue Northwest corridor, and the H Street Northeast corridor. And so again, we'll be part of that task force initiative from the hours of 9:30 p.m. to 3 a.m. on regular weekends, and then from 9:30 p.m. to 4 a.m. on holiday weekends. And again, just to give you guys further ideas as what the task force objectives are, it's really to manage and address the following ATVs being operated on public space, double and triple parking, traffic congestion, and people drinking and partying on public space into the neighborhoods. To give you a little bit more in depth as far as what the roles of the government agencies involved are, the MPD is leading the enforcement efforts and conducting criminal violations enforcement. The fire marshal is conducting real-time monitoring and preventative occupancy checks. ABRA is conducting real-time compliance checks in ABRA liquor license establishments. DCRA is conducting real-time checks of businesses, food trucks, and vending to ensure everybody is within compliance. DDOT is also managing the traffic flow to ensure continuous movement of vehicles across the corridors. DPW is assisting, as Commander had mentioned, with traffic enforcement and removing/relocating vehicles. And also CSOSA and DYRS are creating GPS exclusion zones around the U Street corridor and conducting contacts with their supervisees in real time. And finally, DVHV is conducting enforcement activities in the vicinity of the nightlife areas with a focus on minimizing congestion. And also, we are having a U Street Corridor Nightlife Task Force Town Hall for residents and business operators to be a part of the conversation. And so we can all work on this initiatives together as partners. And that will be this Tuesday, July 12th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Reef Center. So we would love for you to join to learn more about the task force and provide us with your feedback. And as far as some other upcoming programming that the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Culture has been working on is we started a Monk on Wheels program, and that is we have partnered with a nightlife establishment in each ward to give the opportunity for residents, business operators, et cetera, to have a chance to meet myself and the team. And so for Ward 1, we will be at the Tiki Bar / the Game on Thursday, July 21st from 2 to 5. So again, that's another opportunity for anybody to come out and have a conversation with us and ask any questions. Again, another public safety initiative that we are doing is an active shooter program, which will be Thursday, July 14th at 2 o'clock. Again, this training will focus on key areas of safety for business operators. And we are also going to be doing a nighttime economy panel, partnering with Howard University and the Mayor's Office of African Affairs. That will be Tuesday, July 19th at 11. Again, to just discuss all things permitting and licensing for any entrepreneur that is interested in becoming and joining the nighttime economy. And then later this month, we are shooting for the 25th. As we all know too, there's just been a shortage in hiring for all nightlife and hospitality establishments. So we have partnered with the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens to do a hiring fair to see how we can cross the bridge and provide returning citizens with job opportunities and also help fill the gaps with staffing in the various nightlife and hospitality establishments that are here in DC. So that's pretty much what we have for you as of right now. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. And again, we'd love to see you this upcoming Tuesday, July 12th at the Reef Center, 7th floor from 1 to 3 for the U Street Corridor Nightlife Task Force Town Hall.
And if you could post that in the chat.
Yep.
A question is, who's in charge of all these agencies?
So the lead is the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. And then Assistant Chief Kane is extremely involved as well.
Okay, who's the person who gets the measurements and sees if you're really making progress? I'm assuming that you're going to have measurements and a dashboard and look at how many things are increasing, how many tickets have been given,
yeah,
and how often will those be published?
Absolutely. So we're still working out those details, but there is going to be very focused measuring to see exactly, even like you said, from towing cars, et cetera, to seeing, compliance issues. And so that will be the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety and Justice. And they will be there as well at the town hall. So again, that's a great opportunity to come and ask any questions that you may have regarding measurements, reports, et cetera.
Okay. And how does this relate to the council members initiative?
We're all here together, from the council members team to the various sister government agencies team to just combat the public safety in DC that we're all experiencing.
Okay, if commissioners, questions for nightlife, and then we'll ask Kevin that question when we get to him.
Thanks for presenting. We've exchanged emails with you. I would love to potentially invite you to present at our Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Committee meeting on the 20th, if you'd be open to that. Just a similar update. I think that some of our committee members would be open to it.
Absolutely. And if you could you just email us the dates, times, et cetera, that'd be great so we can put that in our calendar.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Jared, if you could take those comments back to your team as well. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and if you guys ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out at nightlife@dc.gov. That's our email. And also feel free to reach out to 202-607-5457.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sable, were there any comments in the chat? Okay, thank you. Kevin from Councilmember Nadeau's office.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me a moment to speak. I'm in transit right now, so I'll just keep it pretty short. I wanted to kind of share update on Councilmember Nadeau's U Street Safety Initiative, which I believe Commissioner Henderhan had briefly mentioned. We will be hosting a series of roundtable discussions with core constituency groups in order to solicit feedback in terms of what type of issues are prevalent and need to be addressed along the U Street area. And to address your question regarding how are we partnering with the mayor's office on these initiatives, we plan to have a roundtable discussion with various stakeholders, whether they be businesses, residents, government organizations. And so I'm sure we'll be looping in Director Solana when the time approaches for us to solicit her feedback. And in terms of the roundtable discussions, I'm going to be dropping a link into the chat now. We're going to be having 2 roundtable discussions coming up. The first one is geared, give me 1 second, will be for residents. It's going to be on Saturday and it's going to be virtual. And that will be on Saturday on July 9th. We'll be also having a virtual roundtable for businesses, and that will be on Wednesday, July 13th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. For those who are unable to attend either of those roundtables, we have a survey where you can fill out and input anything you want the safety initiative to be aware of. There'll also be some interview slots for you to meet with Natalie Avery, who we've hired to be in charge of leading the safety initiative. Natalie is a DC native and the former executive director of the DC Bid Council. And she has 2 decades working with this type of in this type of environment. So we're really excited to have her lead this effort. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll be happy to follow up with you shortly.
Kevin, this just seems like a lot of opportunity for overlap, for lots of drain of resources to multiple roundtables, gatherings, walkabouts, and end up being a bunch of propaganda and talk rather than real actions. How, I would ask you to take that back to the council member,
Okay.
how to better coordinate this, and Jared, you as well, to the mayor's office, that this doesn't become just a big mess in the community.
Well, I think from listening to the two presentations, there is differentiation in that the mayor's task force is out there right now, coordinating agencies doing things on weekends, and the council member's office is listening to the community, holding roundtables, brainstorming more sustainable solutions. So I don't necessarily see these two initiatives being in conflict with one another. Chair Turner, I just wanted to say that.
I don't think they're
the same organizations in pulling them into them. So I hope you're right. Commissioner Harris.
It doesn't seem like they're in conflict. It just, as Chair Turner stated, it's just that there's a lot of overlap and it just seems incredibly inefficient. It also seems inefficient that if there is a community member who does really care about this, has to attend multiple roundtables. It seems like it would be better suited if there was a joint effort, and then also more outreach like to the ANCs. As an ANC for a big portion of U Street, no one has reached out, and I worry that no one has reached out to community members who live on U Street. So I am very wary that, one, it's already a lot of my own time that I need to attend both of these roundtables. Although I do appreciate it and I think it's needed, it just seems a bit redundant.
Well, the moratorium is going to come up in both of them, I'm sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Harris, for that feedback. I just want to clarify, there's two different roundtables, one for residents, one for businesses. But we also have other mechanisms for those who are unable to attend those roundtables. There's a survey form, as well as setting up a one-on-one interview slot with the person who's organizing the safety initiative or in charge of it. But I will also relay the feedback that you would like the ANC involved. And I know that we are gearing up to kind of see who will be on the advisory committee. And I will share the feedback that the ANC is interested in being as involved as possible.
Yeah, I think it's not just like the meetings that you called out. There's also meetings on the mayor's side too, that I mean, like collectively, it's not just like one party over the other. It's like, there's a lot.
Mr. Nelson.
Just a quick comment to not be mean, because that's not the type of person I am, but the mayor came out with this idea way before the council person did. She got on the bandwagon purely because, I know I shouldn't be speaking politically, she wanted to earn votes to get reelected. And there is a whole lot of overlap. And I will say, Kevin, that you really need to stress very, very strongly that the council person needs to listen to everyone that wants to participate in this, because she's done this before, and I won't say when, where she just listens to who she wants to listen to. And there's a lot of us that have important issues that need to be addressed on this. This issue is not something that just fell out of the sky last night. It's been an ongoing issue, and it's got multiple levels of issues that have to be dealt with. The safety issue is one piece of it, but there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be addressed. And she needs to understand, to Sable's point, that there's a lot of people that want to be involved in this, and she needs to open this up to as many people. Don't limit it to a certain crew of people that she wants on there. And, you know, I just think she needs to be a little bit more proactive in how she deals with it.
Understood. I'll share that feedback.
Any other comments for the night? I think it's good that we're getting attention to the problems in the neighborhood. So that in itself is a good thing, and hopefully a cohesive looking at the multiple issues. Commissioners, any announcements? With that, we'll conclude our meeting this evening and see you next month. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.